Before beginning the story, I'd like to say a big thank you for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading alternate history-related stories every single day. If that sounds good, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a whole lot when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. Everything you think you know about the Chernobyl disaster is a lie. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. I'm not some conspiracy theorist living in my mum's basement, connecting red strings on a corkboard. My name is Nolan Westin. I'm 34 years old. I work as an electrician in Cleveland, Ohio. I pay my taxes. I watch football on Sundays. And until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on how the world worked. I was wrong. The reactor at Chernobyl never melted down. There was no catastrophic failure of the cooling system, no operator error, no chain reaction that spiraled out of control. What happened on April 26, 1986, was intentional. The explosion was supposed to destroy something buried deep beneath the reactor core, something that had been sleeping under the Ukrainian soil for longer than humans have existed. It failed. I know this because my grandfather, Victor Westin, was one of the first responders that night. He was also one of the last to die from what the Soviet government called acute radiation syndrome. That's what the official documents say. That's what they told my grandmother when they shipped his body home in a sealed casket, with strict instructions not to open it. But my grandfather called it something else in the letters I found 3 months ago, hidden in my dead mother's basement behind the furnace. He called it the feeding. My mother, Elena, passed away in September after a long battle with cancer. She never talked much about her father. Whenever I asked about him as a kid, she'd get this faraway look in her eyes and change the subject. I figured it was just grief. The man died before I was born, and from what little I knew, it wasn't a peaceful death. I was wrong about that too. After the funeral, I spent 2 weeks cleaning out her house. It was mostly the usual stuff: old furniture, boxes of photographs, clothes that still smelled like her perfume. I was about ready to call in a junk removal company when I found the metal box. It was hidden behind the furnace in the basement, tucked into a gap between the concrete wall and the ductwork, the kind of place you'd never look unless you were specifically searching for something. The box was locked, but the lock was old and rusted. It broke apart in my hands. Inside, I found a bundle of letters tied together with twine, their envelopes yellowed with age. A few faded photographs of men in work clothes standing in front of industrial equipment, and a small glass vial containing what looked like dark soil. The letters were written in Ukrainian. I took them to an old woman named Vera, who attended the Ukrainian Orthodox Church a few blocks from my apartment. She was 92 years old and sharp as a tack, and she'd helped me translate some documents when I was sorting out my mother's estate. I'll never forget the way her face changed as she read those letters. The color drained out of her cheeks. Her hands started trembling so badly that the paper shook. She asked me where I got them. I told her. She set the letters down on the table between us and told me to burn them, to forget I ever found them, to never speak of them again. I didn't listen. The letters were written by my grandfather between 1986 and 1989. They were addressed to my mother. but based on the condition of the envelopes, she never opened them. Maybe she couldn't bring herself to read them. Maybe she knew something I didn't. According to Victor's letters, he was called to the power plant at 2 in the morning on April 26th. But he wasn't there to fight a fire. He and the other men were fighting something that came up from beneath the reactor core. Something that had been sleeping under the earth for millions of years. The reactor was never meant to generate power. Not really. It was built to contain and destroy what Soviet excavation teams found in 1972 during geological surveys for the plant. The explosion wasn't an accident. It was a last resort, a desperate attempt to bury the thing again. When I first read the letters, I thought my grandfather had lost his mind. Radiation poisoning can do terrible things to the human brain. Hallucinations, paranoia, delusions. It made sense that a dying man might construct elaborate fantasies to explain his suffering. Then the dream started. Every night since reading those letters, I've had the same dream. I'm standing in an endless field of dead sunflowers. The stalks are brown and withered, their heavy heads drooping toward the ground. The sky above me is black, but not the black of night. There are no stars, no moon, just an empty void where the sky should be. In the distance, there's a structure. I can't really describe it as a building. It's more like a wound in the earth, a hole that goes down forever. I can see stairs leading into the darkness, descending at an angle that makes my stomach turn. Something at the bottom is breathing. I can hear it, feel it, slow, ancient breaths that make the dead flowers sway even though there's no wind. Each exhale seems to last for minutes. Each inhale pulls at something deep inside my chest. It knows my name. It's been waiting for me. I wake up every morning with dirt under my fingernails. Dark, rich soil, packed beneath the nail beds, even though I haven't been outside. Even though I scrub my hands raw before bed every night. The dreams are getting longer. The breathing is getting louder. And I'm starting to change. It started small. Food began to lose its taste. Everything I ate was like chewing cardboard. I lost 15 pounds in the first month because I could barely force myself to eat. Then came the cravings. I don't want to talk about the cravings, but I need you to understand how wrong this is. How wrong I feel. I've never been a hunter. I've never even liked rare steak. But now I find myself standing in front of the meat section at the grocery store, staring at packages of raw beef, my mouth watering, my hands shaking. I gave in once, just once. I told myself I was just curious. I sat in my kitchen at 3 in the morning and ate half a pound of raw ground beef straight from the package. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. I threw up afterward, not because my body rejected it, but because my mind couldn't handle what I'd done, what I'd enjoyed. The light sensitivity came next. Sunlight started to feel like needles in my eyes. I bought blackout curtains for every window in my apartment. I started wearing sunglasses indoors. My co-workers joked that I was trying to look like a movie star. Then my hearing changed. I can hear things now that I couldn't before. Conversations from the apartment next door, clear as if the people were standing right beside me. The heartbeats of people walking past me on the street, each one distinct, each one sounding like a drum calling me to something I don't want to think about. My boss noticed the changes. He sat me down in his office and suggested I take some medical leave. "Get yourself checked out," he said. "You don't look like yourself anymore." He was right. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. Pale skin, sunken eyes, cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. I'd lost so much weight that my clothes hung off me like I was wearing someone else's body. I saw doctors, lots of them. They ran every test they could think of: blood work, MRIs, CT scans, the whole 9 yards. Everything came back normal. Perfectly healthy, they said. Maybe it's stress. Maybe you should see a therapist. They couldn't see what was happening inside me. They couldn't feel the thing in my blood waking up. And through it all, the pull toward Ukraine grew stronger. A constant pressure in my chest, like a compass needle trying to swing north. Every day I didn't go felt like fighting against a current that was slowly wearing me down. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that there was nothing in Ukraine for me except a radioactive wasteland and the grave of a grandfather I never knew. But the dreams kept coming. The breathing kept getting louder. And one morning, I woke up to find that I'd booked a flight to Kiev in my sleep, my laptop open on my chest, confirmation email glowing on the screen. I should have cancelled it. I should have checked myself into a hospital and demanded they figure out what was wrong with me. Instead, I started packing. Kiev felt wrong from the moment I stepped off the plane. Too loud, too bright, too many heartbeats crowding together, all of them pounding in my ears like 1,000 drums playing out of sync. I spent my first night in a hotel room with the curtains drawn and the lights off, curled up on the bed with my hands pressed over my ears. But when the taxi started driving north toward Chernobyl the next morning, something in my chest began to settle. The noise faded. The pressure eased. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I felt like I was coming home. That scared me more than anything else. Legal tours of the exclusion zone don't go where I needed to go. They stick to the approved routes, take their photos of the abandoned city and the rusting Ferris wheel, and leave before dark. I needed to go deeper. I found a man named Dmitri in a barn near the checkpoint. He was in his 60s, weathered face, hands that looked like they'd done hard work their entire lives. For the right price, he said, he could get me past the checkpoints and into the inner zone. I didn't ask how. I just paid. We drove in silence for most of the journey, down roads that hadn't been maintained in decades, through forests that had reclaimed everything humans left behind. Dmitri kept his eyes on the road and his hands tight on the steering wheel. "You're not a tourist," he said finally. It wasn't a question. I told him about my grandfather, about the letters, about the dreams. He nodded, like none of it surprised him. "There are things in the zone now," he said. "Things that weren't there before. Animals that don't act right. Sounds at night that don't match any creature I know. The old-timers say the forest is sick, that something is spreading through the roots, through the water, through everything." I asked him what he meant. He just crossed himself and drove faster. We passed through Pripyat as the sun was setting. The abandoned apartment buildings stood like rotten teeth against the orange sky. The famous Ferris wheel cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. Everything was still, silent, empty. Except it didn't feel empty to me. I could feel something humming beneath my feet. a vibration too low to hear but impossible to ignore, like standing over a massive machine that was just starting to warm up. Dmitri stopped the car about a mile from the reactor. He pointed through the windshield at the massive concrete structure in the distance. "I go no further," he said. "You want to die in there. That's your business. I won't watch." I opened the door to get out, but he grabbed my arm. "Your grandfather," he said. "He came back too. After he left, after he got sick, he came back. They all do. Everyone who was there that night, the ones who survived, they all came back eventually." He let go of my arm. "They never leave again." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but he was already driving away, his taillights disappearing into the growing dark. I wasn't alone. I found them about half a mile from the reactor, camped in a clearing in the woods. 4 people huddled around a small fire, their faces gaunt, their eyes reflecting the flames in ways that didn't look quite right. They didn't seem surprised to see me. One of them, a tall man with blonde hair and a Swedish accent, just gestured for me to sit down. His name was Eric. His father had been part of a cleanup crew that came to Chernobyl in 1987. He died 3 years later from what the doctors called mysterious organ failure. The woman next to him was Sasha from Moscow. Her grandfather had been an engineer at the plant. He'd survived the initial disaster, only to walk into the exclusion zone 5 years later and never come out. Pavel was from Belarus. His great-uncle had been one of the helicopter pilots who dropped sand and boron on the burning reactor in the days after the explosion. He'd lived longer than most, almost 20 years, but he'd spent the last decade of his life talking about voices in his head and something calling him home. The last one was Anya. She wouldn't say who her connection was, just that the dreams had brought her here, same as the rest of us. All of them had the same symptoms I did. The hunger, the sensitivity to light, the sounds that no one else could hear, the feeling that something inside them was changing, growing, waking up. "It's in our blood," Eric said. "Whatever happened that night, whatever came up from below, it got into the people who were there, and it's been passed down ever since." "What is it?" I asked. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. But we were all about to find out. They told me what they knew, and I told them what my grandfather's letters had revealed, and together we started to piece together the truth. In 1972, Soviet geologists conducting surveys for a new power plant found something 400 meters below the surface. A cavern. Natural, but wrong in ways the scientists couldn't explain. The walls were covered in organic matter that didn't match anything in the biological record. Tissue that was still alive after what they estimated was millions of years. At the center of the cavern was a mass. Huge, pulsing, breathing. One breath every few days, so slow that it took weeks of observation to confirm it was actually alive. The scientists tried to take samples. Their equipment failed. Workers started disappearing. The ones who came back weren't the same. The Soviet government buried the discovery under so many layers of classification that it might as well not have existed. Then they built the reactor directly over the cavern. It was never about power. It was about containment. The theory was that a controlled nuclear reaction would either kill the thing below or seal it permanently under tons of radioactive debris. For 14 years, it seemed to work. The readings from below stabilized. The breathing slowed. The scientists started to believe they'd won. Then, on April 26, 1986, the thing woke up. The explosion wasn't caused by operator error. It wasn't caused by a flawed reactor design. It was caused by something pushing up from below with enough force to crack the foundation of the entire complex. The explosion was triggered intentionally by the plant engineers. A desperate attempt to collapse the structure and bury the cavern under thousands of tons of concrete and steel. My grandfather and the other first responders weren't fighting fires that night. They were fighting the things that came up through the breach. Creatures made from the same tissue as the mass below. Things that wore human shapes but moved wrong, spoke wrong, existed wrong. The radiation story was a cover, a way to keep people out, to quarantine the area, to give the thing time to settle back into dormancy. But it never really settled. It's still down there, still breathing, still growing. And the people who were exposed that night, the ones who survived, they carried something away with them. A piece of the thing below, lodged in their blood, passed down through generations, waiting for the right moment to wake up. The dreams, the hunger, the changes, they're all signs that the moment is coming. And we've all been called home to witness it. The pull toward the reactor grew stronger as the night went on. It started as a gentle pressure, like someone resting their hand on my chest. By midnight, it felt like a hook buried in my ribs, pulling me forward with every breath. One by one, the others stood up and started walking toward the structure. Eric first, then Sasha, then Pavel. They didn't say anything. They just walked, their eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Anya looked at me before she followed them. She was smiling. "It's beautiful," she said. "Can't you feel it? It's been waiting for us. It's been so lonely." I could feel it. That was the worst part. I could feel the thing's hunger, its need, its ancient loneliness reaching out to us like a hand in the dark. Part of me wanted to take that hand. Part of me wanted to let go of everything I'd been and become something new. But I thought about my grandfather, Victor, who saw this thing with his own eyes and spent the last years of his life trying to warn his daughter, who wrote letters that went unread because my mother was too afraid to open them, who died knowing that his bloodline was contaminated and that someday his descendants would hear the call. I didn't want to prove him right. I followed the others anyway. I told myself I just wanted to see, just wanted to understand. But really, I don't think I had a choice anymore. My body was moving on its own, my legs carrying me forward while my mind screamed at me to turn back. The reactor was a tomb. We entered through a breach in the containment wall, stepping over rubble that crunched under our feet like dry bones. The air inside was warm and wet, like the breath of something alive. The walls were covered in something that glistened in the beam of my flashlight. Organic matter, spreading across the concrete like mold on bread. The deeper we went, the warmer it got. The radiation meters we'd brought started going haywire, their readings jumping and falling in patterns that made no sense. Then they stopped working altogether. We found stairs leading down, not the original stairs of the structure. These were new, carved into the organic matter that had consumed the foundations. They spiraled into darkness, going deeper than the reactor ever did. The others descended without hesitation. I followed because I couldn't stop myself. As we went down, the others started to change. Eric's eyes went completely black, the whites swallowed by darkness that seemed to absorb my flashlight beam. Sasha's skin began to ripple, like something was moving just beneath the surface, pressing against her from the inside. Pavel started speaking in a language I'd never heard before, but somehow I understood every word. He was praying, thanking the thing below for choosing him, thanking it for the gift of transformation. Anya just kept smiling, her face slack with a peace I couldn't comprehend. I felt the changes trying to happen in me too. The thing in my blood pushing against my skin, trying to remake me into something else. I fought it with everything I had. I bit my tongue until I tasted copper. I dug my nails into my palms until they bled. I focused on the pain, used it as an anchor to keep myself human. It wasn't enough. I could feel myself slipping. The cavern was vast. We emerged from the stairs into a space so large that my flashlight couldn't reach the walls. The ceiling was lost somewhere in the darkness above. Everything was covered in that same organic tissue, pulsing with a slow rhythm that matched the breathing I'd heard in my dreams. And at the center was the mass. I can't describe it. Not really. My mind keeps sliding off the memory like water off glass. It was huge, filling most of the cavern, a mountain of living tissue that breathed and pulsed and watched us with awareness I could feel pressing against my thoughts. It was beautiful. It was terrible. It was the most wrong thing I've ever seen. The others walked toward it without hesitation. Eric first, stepping into the mass, like he was stepping into a warm bath. His body sank into the tissue, his face peaceful, his eyes still locked on mine as he disappeared. Sasha followed, then Pavel, still praying in that ancient language, then Anya, who turned to look at me one last time. "It just wants to go home," she said. "Same as us. It's been trapped here so long. We can help it. We can carry it." Then she was gone, absorbed into the mass like the others. And I understood. The thing couldn't leave the cavern. It was too big, too old, too connected to the earth that had been its prison for millions of years. But it could spread, through us, through everyone who carried its blood, every descendant who answered the call and let themselves be absorbed added to its network. It was building something, a web of consciousness spread across the world, sleeping in the blood of thousands of people who had no idea what they carried. And when there were enough of them, when the web was complete, it wouldn't need to leave the cavern at all. It would simply wake up inside all of us at once. I stood at the edge of the mass, feeling the pull stronger than ever. It offered me everything: peace, purpose, an end to the loneliness I'd carried my whole life. All I had to do was take one more step. I thought about my grandfather again, about the letters he wrote that my mother never read, about the warning he tried to pass down through the generations. I thought about all the people out there who were starting to have the same dreams I had, who were starting to change, who had no idea what was waking up inside them. Someone had to warn them. I ran. I don't know how I made it out. The cavern seemed to fight me. The floor shifted under my feet. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. I could feel the thing's anger pressing against my skull, its hunger clawing at the edges of my mind. But I kept running, up the spiraling stairs, through the organic tunnels that had replaced the reactor's corridors, out into the cold night air. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, until I collapsed in the dead grass a mile from the structure. Behind me, I could feel the thing settling back into patience. It wasn't worried. It knew I'd be back. They always came back. But it was wrong. I'm not going back. Not ever. I made it out of the exclusion zone. I flew back to America. I went back to my apartment in Cleveland and tried to pretend everything was normal. But nothing is normal anymore. The hunger is still there. The sensitivity to light. The sounds that no one else can hear. The dreams that come every night, more vivid than ever. The thing is still inside me, still growing, still waiting. I haven't escaped. I've just brought a piece of it with me. And I'm not alone. In the week since I got back, I've found them. Online forums, support groups, comment sections buried in the corners of the internet. Thousands of people describing the same symptoms, the same dreams, the same feeling that something inside them is waking up. Children and grandchildren of the liquidators, descendants of evacuees from Pripyat, families of scientists, soldiers, engineers, people scattered across every continent, all of them carrying the same thing in their blood, all of them being called home. The thing under Chernobyl doesn't need to leave its cavern. It's already everywhere, sleeping inside anyone who carries even a trace of its essence, building its network, one descendant at a time. And someday, maybe soon, it's going to wake up all at once. I don't know how much time I have left. I can feel it getting stronger every day. The hunger is harder to resist. The dreams are harder to wake up from. Some nights, I can feel the others out there, the thousands of descendants scattered across the world, all of us connected by the thing in our blood, all of us waiting for the same moment. I'm sharing this because someone needs to know the truth. Because if you have family who worked at Chernobyl, who helped with the cleanup, who lived in the exclusion zone even for a few days, you need to understand what might be inside you. If you've been having strange dreams lately, if food has started to lose its taste, if you've been craving things you shouldn't crave, if you've felt a pull towards something you can't explain, don't go looking for answers. Don't visit Ukraine. Don't answer the call. Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And sooner or later, everyone answers. The reactor at Chernobyl didn't melt down. It opened something. And now, that something is waking up inside all of us.